Welcome back to BrookeNJake Make, where I'm not Brooke.
And I'm not Jake. And today we're making a fire pit table, but this time we made a plan. There's a lot going on with this build, but we will have a shelf on the bottom made of slats, and then on the top we are going to do a little something fun.
You might not be able to tell, but we're trying to challenge ourselves. So with that, we're doing joinery, or at least we think we're doing joinery, and we hope to use no screws, or like less than 4, maybe, something like that. Also, since this is a outside fire pit table, and will always remain outside to the best of our knowledge, we picked up level 3 wood glue, which is waterproof instead of just water resistant. Good thing to note, hopefully it works for us.
So without further ado, let's get into it.
Okay, so now we're just going to cut everything down to size. We're going to rip the boards down to about 4.5 inches, and then we're going to cut the legs down to size and get them all matched up, and then start working on our drawings.
So now that we have the legs cut to size, we are going to cut holes in the legs for our joins. We're going to cut holes in the top and remove like a section on one side and a section on the other side. And then we're going to do the same thing in the middle and making sure that both of those sections that we cut out are on the same size as the top and the bottom. And we're going to cut those at 1.5 inches deep because that is the thickness of our boards that we're using for the frame around the shelf and the top of the table. So that way it'll keep everything flush.
To get started, we're going to set the depth of our blade so that we don't cut all the way through this time. And how we're going to do that is we're going to move this little lock that currently lets us go all the way through over so that it'll stop it from hitting the bottom down here. And we're going to put that at the depth that we want this to cut, and we want it to cut pretty shallow. So we're just going to spin this way down to about 1.5 inches and compare it to our board. Well, as you can see, we have a boat. We made the hull of a ship, but guess what? That's not what we're looking for at all. We thought it would make it flat, but what we actually need to do is put a gap here so that the tall part, the longest part of the blade, is hitting all the way through the board and not slowly curving up, and instead it'll be going through at the same level. Okay, so the 2x4s that we had that were separate weren't working quite as well as we hoped, and Brooke actually watched another YouTuber that set up something very similar, and so we're going to steal that idea and work it into this one, and it should help things go a little bit smoother, help the board to go flush when we go back and forth, and not have that little getting stuck. We are still taping it, we're not screwing it, just because it's not our miter saw, so here we go again.
Okay, now that we have all of our joins cut into each of the legs and all of our framework cut to the right size, we're going to cut 45-degree angles on each piece of the framework so that way they meet at a perfect corner on each of the legs where we cut our notches out.
So we just dry fit the supports, and we're going to go ahead and take our level 3 waterproof glue, get both sets of legs long sides set up, and then we'll come back and make them one whole unit with the short sides.
Okay. You didn't answer me. Are you ready? Okay. Okay, so now that we have the long sides of the frame glued down and they've sat for about 30 minutes, that way the glue kind of sets up mostly, we are going to attach the short sides and then let it sit overnight so that way the glue can fully set up.
Magic. Okay, so our wood putty's set up overnight, and we sanded it down this morning, and now we're ready to get it all stained. And for this, Brooke actually came up with a really good idea. What she decided to do was red mahogany mixed with pickled oak, and it gives us a very soft reddish tint that we hope will contrast really well against our slightly darker wood for the posts, and then our supports are a lighter wood, can't see me, which should highlight the differences in the two woods. And then we still haven't decided what we're doing for the top. We might stain it, we might leave it unstained and just seal it, we'll see. We're stained and ready to go. I'm gonna now measure the top and get the 4 different corners, and then hopefully use a square to match it all up and get it lined up so that I can cut nice even lines and have a very flush fitting. Then we'll hit it with some stain, prep it for our epoxy, and get to casting. Oh, and I need to cut the slats for the bottom, but that'll come after. And we have the trapezoid. I think. Do I have enough in case I mess up? This does not measure things. Nope. So we're gonna cut it. And I can't cut it on here. So we're gonna set up a sawhorse, maybe. So I'm gonna cut on the outside of the lines for safety. I could use a jigsaw. I could use a sawzall, but we have no blades. My heart says to use this with the little track saw that we got, but we haven't used it yet. and I don't really know how to use it. So we can just barely see our line there. So then if we put our track saw next to it, our track saw won't cut, or it's gonna hit the metal the whole time. So we undo this, slide it over until our blade is on the line. So we want our track saw to be right there-ish. So our track saw is slightly to the left of the line because we know it's gonna chunk a bit. So then we tap this where we want it. Oh, but how am I gonna make sure it's angled? Oh, if I put a battery in it, it's got a laser. All right, so we're slapping a battery in it, and then there's a laser. Oh, do I have it backwards? Can I make it cut the other way? So we just push it. How is this working? Oh my goodness. Pure talent.
Yay!
I am scared. I got one chance to make this work. Brooke's not here to second approve my method. I mean, I have the utmost confidence in my abilities. Alright, so now that we have the saw set up from the best of my abilities and knowledge, we will move it over to the saw horses and get that moving along.
It's time for the big reveal of what we're doing for the top. We are going to pour resin on top of the piece of plywood that we already put on there, and we are going to cast fall leaves in the resin and kind of do a cool pattern with them. And hopefully it works. I'm pretty nervous about it, but we'll see how it goes.
All right, so we got our leaves placed, and now we're gonna set up to get our first pour ready. And this time we picked up 2 new epoxies for us yet again. We picked up some food safe ones since we want to use this outside and we want to use it for s'mores. Yeah. So there's going to be food that could touch it or may indirectly touch it. So we wanted to pick up something that we know is FDA approved. And now we're going to pour about half and half and get our first, I think it's called a flood coat in, and get our first coat in. A seal coat. Yeah. We'll get our first seal coat in. So, while you're stirring this, what do you expect to happen? What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know. I'm so nervous. Like, I'm really afraid that it's not going to work and we're going to, like, have completely messed it up and we're going to have to figure out how to take the top off, or the resin's just going to keep pouring off the side and we're not going to be able to have fixed it at all.
Yeah, so I think my biggest concern is the tape not holding.
Yeah.
And then resin pouring all over everything, and we have to sand it all back down and get it back down.
A lot of sanding because it's thick.
Yeah, and I think that's gonna leave like marring and like bad kind of effects. So I'm pretty nervous about that part. I think the leaves could shift around when we pour, but we plan to use sticks to try and keep that.
Yeah, sticks or tweezers, we'll see what works. Hopefully I don't have to use my only pair of tweezers. But
my other big scare is that it's going to get cloudy and we're not actually going to be able to see the leaves because they're deep.
Yeah.
Like this, we're expecting to make this about an inch thick. I'm excited. I hope all the colors stay because we got our first round of leaves like 2 days ago, 3 days ago, and left them out to kind of dry and flatten on us, and all of them lost their color. Like we had reds, we had greens, we definitely had yellows, and now they're all kind of a brown mess and they're crunchy. So we got brand new leaves today.